Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, at the press conference devoted to the transaction related to acquisition of heating assets by PGE Group. Conference will be participated by Minister of Energy Krzysztof Tchórzewski, President of PGE Henryk Baranowski, and VP for Operations Ryszard Wasiłek. Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you very much indeed. Today, an important is finalized, which was preceded by many months of negotiations between PGE Group and EDF. EDF assets in Poland become the property of PGE. As a result, PGE controls 45% of the energy market in Poland. In other words, it is the main leader and the tone setter on the Polish energy sector. After Połaniec, this is the second transaction when it comes to the French companies pulling away from the Polish market. The situation is not part of any special operations. Simply mother companies have their own issues. And these issues result in the decisions aimed at making sure that other investments will be possible. Therefore, their assets from individual states are sold. EDF Polska, from the perspective of its financial results, was not qualifying for sales. The reason behind the sale was simply that the mother company wanted to redirect the funds. From the point of view of the state's energy security, it's not only the market and the price that matters. What we care about is the reliability, sustainability and credibility of our partners. Thus, the acquisitions by Enea and PGE were not part of the plans that were decided about years back. However, from the perspective of energy security, as we had no other partners ready for cooperation, we took the decisions, which were then approved by general shareholders' meetings of individual companies. We consider this to be an important step from the perspective of energy security of Poland. Furthermore, it's very important from the perspective of internal constellation of energy companies in Poland, both in terms of preparation of the energy policy and the plans to modernize the energy sector in Poland. The program of CO2 emissions and so on and so forth is key. On the one hand, we speak of the market. On the other hand, it's the European Commission negotiating with the governments of the individual member states on their reduction targets and the targeted mode of functioning of the energy sector. This resulted in some disputes and conflicts. On the one hand, we had some targets which were a surprise, which were not part of a multi-annual program right now within the winter package. We have 550 grams per kilowatt hour. They have nothing to do with the business programs of individual companies. As a state, Poland needs to take the right approach to that. Decisions taken by the European Commission result in the market being controlled by authorities. We want to make sure that in the future the Polish energy sector will be able to cover the needs of the social part of the market as well as the industrial part of the market. Our society is getting wealthier and wealthier, and our needs go up. Our research so far has been a source of very interesting information for us. I was really interested in the results. Prior to that, the assumption was that the growth of demand will not exceed 1.5%, because we are talking about energy efficiency, because we are talking about thermal efficiency. The European Commission was forecasting that all member states would lower the electricity consumption in the coming years by 8%. Is in Poland. If we continue on the same path, the growth of electricity generation will not be able to cover our demand. 2.4% in the years 2015-2016 was a vital sign for us. In 2030, that would mean that we would need 25% more energy generated. What was enough was just a bit of money that Polish families acquired. What's behind it is maybe the fact that we have the family benefit 500 plus. The middle class families who did not use this money for direct consumption.
Zauważania na rynku znaczny wzrost sprzedaży. Więc my musimy patrzeć na to, my musimy ten rynek analizować też i musimy zobaczyć, jak my sobie z tym poradzimy. Bo jeżeli by było rzeczywiście te 20 na rok 2030, że ilość globalna energii sprzedawana będzie wzrośnie 23-25%, to my mamy całkiem inne oczekiwania i musimy całkowicie inaczej popatrzeć na naszą politykę energetyczną i to wszystko w zakresie transformacji z jednej strony i przyrostu mocy z drugiej strony, to są olbrzymie wydatki. Więc w tym wszystkim patrząc na to, że spółki z udziałem Skarbu Państwa zwiększyły swój udział i bardziej kontrolują rynek, no daje łatwiejszą możliwość planowania przyszłościowego, bo jednak biznes prywatny jest o tyle ma większe możliwości, że nie musi swoich zamiarów do przodu tak ujawniać, jak musi to ujawniać w swoich planach zarówno budżetowych państwo. Więc to jest jedna rzecz bardzo bardzo istotna, jeśli chodzi o te rzeczy, o których tutaj będziemy mówili, więc tutaj front inwestycyjny będzie musiał wzrosnąć. Więc te transakcje, one cieszą bardzo mnie z tego tytułu, że jednak pisały to się spółki energetyczne i że nie będę się martwił, jakie zamiary ma ten inwestor, który to kupił, jak on będzie dalej inwestował, co on będzie dalej robił, jak on się wpisze w to, czy będzie modernizował ciepłownię, czy zrobi z tego elektrociepłownię. No, mamy tu w wielu przypadkach, no to są rzeczy i on nie musi z ministrem energii współpracować w tej dziedzinie, nikt go do ujawnienia zamiarów nie zmusi. To są tego typu rzeczy. To jest jedno. Ale drugie, że na jedną i drugą inwestycję zostały skierowane duże pieniądze przez spółki energetyczne, a my musimy robić inwestycje modernizacyjne i musimy robić inwestycje w przyszłość, czyli budować nowe elektrownie. I to właśnie też czeka nasze spółki, ale cieszę się, bo jednak damy radę. I myślę, że o tym zakupie dzisiaj panowie prezesi powiedzą, a na następnych spotkaniach na pewno powiemy, dlaczego damy radę. Dziękuję bardzo.
Dziękujemy panu ministrowi za wystąpienie. Panie prezesie, a teraz czas na pogłębienie wiedzy naszych szanownych gości na temat transakcji. Bardzo proszę.
Dziękuję bardzo. Dzień dobry państwu. Mam nadzieję, że jesteście szczęśliwi, że tak szybko dowiecie się o transakcji. Informacja o tym, że grupa podpisała umowę opcji put podaliśmy w zeszłym tygodniu w piątek. W tym tygodniu podajemy informację o tym, że transakcja czy umowa warunkowa została dzisiaj podpisana. Postaramy się państwu przybliżyć parametry tej transakcji, opowiedzieć troszeczkę o tym, co to znaczy dla grupy PGE, jakie kierunki rozwoju widzimy i dlaczego uważamy, że ta transakcja jest istotna i ważna dla całej grupy. Na wstępie chciałbym podkreślić, że nie spotkalibyśmy się dzisiaj tutaj, gdyby nie wysiłek całego zespołu, który pracował nad tą transakcją, zarówno po stronie francuskiej, jak i po stronie PGE. I w tym miejscu chciałbym wszystkim zaangażowanym w przygotowanie tej transakcji, była to, muszę przyznać, intensywna i ciężka, wielomiesięczna praca i wielomiesięczne negocjacje. Chciałbym w tym momencie wszystkim zaangażowanym w realizację czy przygotowanie tej transakcji podziękować. Dziękuję również Radzie Nadzorczej
Supervisory Board for their positive opinion on this transaction and for considering it to be in line with our development strategy that we presented in September last year. On my side, I have no doubt that this is an important and good step for the whole group. Diversification. It's not us this time. It diversifies our portfolio, diversifies our value chain. It supports the initiatives that we wish to implement in the upcoming years. As stated, this transaction is also, in my opinion, a favorable step for the whole energy sector in Poland. Like was said by the minister, EDF assets are going to be in good hands. PGE knows how to manage them, is very knowledgeable about the business, and in my view there won't be any problems related to acquisition of these assets. Nevertheless, the whole acquisition process will be a hard one. However, we are ready for it, so we are well prepared and we are well aware of how to carry it out in practice. As I have emphasized, the purchase of EDF was a conscious decision of ours. It is in line with the line of development of the company. We spared no effort to analyze the assets that we are acquiring. We wanted to identify all possible benefits and synergies within the group. And we wanted to be clear about possible risk factors associated with the assets that we are acquiring. Let me emphasize that the assets that we are acquiring are not only fixed assets, technologies or access to several million clients in the biggest Polish cities like the Tri-City, Wrocław or Kraków. What we are acquiring are also talented and perfectly qualified employees and great managers. When it comes to employee relations, PGE is focusing on long-term cooperation based on mutual respect. And I do believe that our HR policy carried out by EDF will support our efforts and will consolidate and strengthen the PGE's position on at least the Polish market. Let me now give you an overview of the transaction. Let's take a short look at the details of the acquisition. As I have stated before, the process had its own dynamics. There were several breakthroughs and several 180 degrees turns. Luckily, we are right now on the right side. We have reached the shore, and we can say that these assets will be our value, will be ours. We are very happy about it. We have tapped the potential. We have used the opportunity. Now we have full operational control over the assets acquired. Importantly, we will have full financial consolidation capacity of EDF with PGE. In terms of value, the enterprise value of the company, the value that we are going to pay for it, the transaction value is 4.5 billion, equity value is 2.5 billion, and for that amount we are purchasing the said assets. Acquiring the Polish EDF assets, we will be also regulating our internal debt. Polish obligations at the end of 2016 amount to around 2 billion PLN. EDF Group has been applying exactly the same mechanisms of financing in its companies like PGE does currently. Therefore, there is no problem nor surprise for us. Let me emphasize that the transaction will be financed from our own means, and as stated by Mr. Wójtowicz during the conference presenting our results, at the end of Q1, PGE had 4.6 billion PLN of assets. At the end of Q1, the debt of PGE was only 70% of the annual EBITDA, which is really low level. We enjoy a high investment ranking, and the perspective is stable. And capital value is, as said before, 2.5 billion PLN as of the 31st of December 2016. In line with the contract, we will be clearing the transaction prior to the 2nd of January 2018. However, we hope to do it more quickly. In our view, we should be able to close the transaction more quickly. The final payment will be corrected. The maximum value of correction, i.e. the interest, is 100 million PLN. If we assume that we are to close between the 2nd of December 2016, we want this transaction to finish as quickly as possible, and we want to avoid paying high interest. Here I would like to remark that from the beginning of 2017, PGE will be benefiting from the assets acquired. This will be possible thanks to the formula of the transaction, which assumes the so-called lockbox day, which was set to be the 31st of December 2013. We are fully aware that we are not talking about small amounts of money, small transactions. However, in our view, bearing in mind the scale of the business, this is a fair value of the assets acquired, and we are satisfied with that. For comparison, in terms of assets acquired, PGE's EBITDA for 2016 is around 7.4 billion PLN. EDF assets generated last year 1.1 billion PLN in EBITDA. From this perspective, 4.5 billion PLN as a transaction value meets the standards of the market. In our view, it's a fair value of the company. Now, let's focus on the benefits for investors of PGE Group. We are always trying to emphasize these benefits. From our point of view, this transaction importantly changes the structure of the business that PGE has been carrying out up until now. The highest share in PGE is electricity generation. It's obviously very susceptible to turmoils on the market of raw materials, so resulting in price risk and financing risk. Heating generation, just like distribution of energy, is a regulated business. Financial results of these segments are much more predictable. Thus, we will be able to plan more easily and more reliably our financial activities. Regulated business is more willingly financed by banks and by bondholders. Creditors perceive this sector as stable. Thus, owners can benefit from cheaper credits, cheaper loans, which is very important from the perspective of incurring significant modernization costs. In our view, as we have been emphasizing when we released the strategy last year, heat market in Poland enjoys very good perspectives. I'm sure that Ryszard Wasiłek, the VP for Operations, will be able to tell you more about it. He will give you our perspective of the market and our perspective on the market's potential for development. District heating development may be an answer to the problems related to environmental pollution. I'm sure you remember the discussions about smog in Polish cities. Smog, let me emphasize it, is the result of the so-called low-stack emissions, i.e. vehicles, the automotive sector, and the fact that heating in individual houses is not efficient enough. We do believe that the regulatory environment will be favorable for the development of this segment. We hope that this will drive its further development. I am certain that state administration understands this problem, and that district heating systems and cogeneration will be supported by the state. When evaluating this transaction, we not only look at the current assets and the customer base. We see a change for the group related to winning a significant number of new customers. This will result from the acquisition capacities of the EDF Polska and PGE. We hope that this may have a significant impact on improvement of both the image and the results of PGE Group in this particular field. What's more, we expect that Poland will be getting more and more urbanized as the standard of living of our citizens is going up. People will be moving to cogeneration and district heating. We will be telling you more about it in a second. As you see, the cogeneration development strategy within PGE was to be revealed in more detail in the second half of the year. However, already now we can say that cogeneration development strategy will be announced in September. It will be at the beginning of September 2017, right after the holidays. Inaudible remark by one of the journalists. Please note that we are acquiring assets at locations in which up until now PGE's presence was rather low. These assets are located in Kraków, used to be the area of Toruń, in Wrocław, Zielona Góra. This used to be Enea's area or the seaside where Energa was functioning. We see huge potential and huge synergies for the whole group. I think that our presence at these locations will definitely improve both the awareness as well as the recognizability of PGE. And this will directly translate to financial results and the development of the whole group. What's more, we expect to achieve significant economies of scale. I will give you some detail about it in a second. Let me now move on to the scope of investment. As you see, the slide is pretty legible. In practice, we are taking over 99.5% of shares of EDF Polska and 100% of shares of EDF Investment. Through that, as you can see, we are acquiring their dependent companies. I hope the previous slide was legible enough to you. Shall there be any questions, we will be giving you more information about it. Now let's move on to a summary of the acquired assets. What do they look like from the point of view of statistics? That's altogether 8% of the demand, 13.6 terawatt of electricity, 33 petajoules of annual heat generation. It's hard to relate that to the demand for heat. The methodology of calculations is pretty complex. We don't have district heating available all over the country, therefore we are not able to reflect upon the global potential of the country. Let me now move on to giving you an overview of PGE Group after the transaction. Our information will be based on results for 2016. In terms of development of groups such as PGE, there are actually two growth formulas available. It's organic growth, i.e. the slower one that uses internal potential of the company, or the non-organic one, acquisitions. In other words, the situation that we are facing right now. For years, PGE has been developing its generation and distribution assets, so we have allocated significant organic capex for that. Right now, we are talking about acquisition of new assets. Thanks to that transaction, our installed capacity will grow by 25%. This will also be the growth rate of our electricity generation capacity. Last year, we were able to reach a level of 54 terawatt hours, which means a very good baseline for further growth. If we had the assets that we are acquiring right now, last year, electricity generation would reach 97 terawatt hours, exceeding by 40% the national demand. An even greater leap will be made when it comes to heat generation. Our thermal capacity will grow by over 100%, and heat generation will grow by 177%. This shows us that the assets that we are acquiring have a very high annual usage ratio. We are right now presenting to you the pro forma data for 2016, the aggregated financial data for PGE for 2016. And let me emphasize, this is just pro forma data. You cannot sum up financial data just like you do the operational data. The real financial effect will be visible in our consolidated reports once we have finalized the transaction. In other words, hopefully after some months from now. Last but not least, what will we look like after the transaction in terms of organization? What's ahead of us after the transaction? Well, we will order the holding structure from the legal and formal perspective, and we will integrate it with the structure of PGE. The consolidating or the integrating teams will start their work next week. It is next week that we are going to appoint a plenipotentiary of PGE for integration. We have set the date of the first meeting of the Polish and French teams. They will meet on Monday, the 29th of May. We are within our works planning to prepare development plans for the acquired assets, and we plan to carry them out. PGE analysis have already been performed. Our plans must be expanded by the acquired assets. We are acquiring the assets as a long-term investor. We want these units and facilities to work as long as possible. Of course, we hear some voices saying, why are you purchasing Rybnik? Won't it be an excessive burden for you, and what do you plan to do with Rybnik? Some say that PGE is asking for trouble. Let me emphasize it with full responsibility. We are not sharing that view. We have our own plans in terms of Rybnik, and we do have some specific ideas related to Rybnik. Mr. Wasiłek will be able to tell you something more about it. I'm not going to break the secret to you. I'm not going to rain on his parade. He will be talking to you about our plans. Ryszard, the floor is yours right now. You're in command. Please tell us what we want to do. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have heard, there was a very telling slide showing you that the group is increasing its asset base in terms of electricity generation by 25% and 20-something% in terms of generation and installed capacity. However, as we heard, there is a significant growth of our share in heat generation. 177%. That's the figure that we were showing to you. That's the growth rate of our share in heat generation. PGE has for some time now been noticing that heat is a very good product. It's of course a a unique one, and for some time now we have been working very hard on it. You probably know that in the strategy that we presented to you last year, we assumed to separate our heating assets. We came to the conclusion that this product, namely heat, is rather specific. Currently we are working on it, and it is said that we will be able to create a new business line, PGE Kogeneracja, from these assets. As time goes by, the synergies related to our current assets and the assets that we are acquiring from EDF will have to be integrated. We do have some experience in this respect. The assets that we own now, heating assets, I mean, are located in large cities. We have them in Szczecin, Bydgoszcz, Lublin, so clear the potential and the knowledge is there. We know how to solve different problems. Heating market, as you see on the slide, is rather specific. What is typical for it are the following aspects. It's always local. We have to be very well aware of the fact that heat is a local product. You cannot send heat from the north of Poland to the south. With electricity, that is the case. With heat, it's not. With our geographical location, we are going to need heat. No change here. Thus, as I said, for some time now, we have been of the opinion that heat is an important product, and PGE Group, particularly now, with such an important growth of our position on the heat market, we cannot neglect this product. EU solutions are favorable for us. The EU's solutions are important for our operations. They will allow us to develop the heat market. Undoubtedly, diversification of electricity production, i.e. cogeneration, supports energy security of a state. We are dealing with a broad spectrum of sources generating electricity. From an operational perspective, a defect of a 500 megawatt block may result in serious problems with distribution. A blackout of a smaller source in cogeneration does not have such daring consequences. From the perspective of energy security, this is a significant step. I've already told you that this is a specific product indeed. However, city dwellers who use district heating do not have any option to use any other substitute of that product. For them, it's vital. Therefore, for us, cooperation with local authorities, with mayors, is important. We will be working on the quality of that cooperation, since, as I said, this product is very specific in nature. Why do we want to focus on the heat market? On this slide, I'm sharing you the share of cogeneration in heat production by voivodeships. If you look at the bottom left graph, the potential for cogeneration in Poland is very big in certain voivodeships. We see clear chances for us to tap this potential. However, the next picture shows you the usage level. We see a dire need for changes so that these assets can generate value. This is the potential that I spoke about a second ago. It can be tapped by us. As you see in this slide, development of heat in PGE includes the assets that we already own now, the ones that we are going to acquire from EDF, and that are going to be the topic of our synergies. Continuously, we will be acquiring new elements of the heating system. We are very much interested in heating networks. Synergies between heat generating entity and an operator of networks is key. In Gorzów, we have some very good examples of that. There we own not only the generation facilities, but also the networks. Fighting smog there is carried out under a vast program, Kafka. We are present in many houses and we are able to fight the low stack emissions in this way. This is a very positive example. For Kraków, for instance, this is the only solution that we see to reduce smog, substituting low stack emissions in the city center with district heating. EDF does not have their networks there, but we will be trying to negotiate in such a way as to solve the problem of smog in Kraków in this manner. You perhaps know that the current support for cogeneration ends in 2018. However, we are obtaining many signals from the Ministry of Energy that this will continue beyond 2018. It's very important to have this support if we are talking about development of this segment. As I said before, there are many reasons behind it. Even when we look at the efficiency levels, the energy consumption, and energy security, the support should be there. We are basing our ideas related to heat generation on the assumption that the support will be there. We believe that this will be the case. Even the EU is preferring such solutions. Electricity and heat, it's a perfect match for both. I was mentioning energy security to you. On the other hand, heat generation for local markets and cooperation with local authorities, offering additional services like is the case in Gorzów, is the right way forward. We hope that we will be able to offer solutions that will make local markets very positive towards our solutions concerning heat generation. Cogeneration and heat generation also form an important part of the energy security landscape. For some time now, PGE has been working on heat. On this slide, you see more details about PGE Ciepło, PGE Heat, our program. As you can see, we have identified a number of locations in Poland which should be covered by our acquisition. The processes are already in the pipeline, undoubtedly. Now that we have additional assets, this process will speed up. We will be able to reach smaller locations. Definitely we will be offering solutions related to cogeneration using the fact that the assets in many municipalities are losing value. Many municipalities are struggling with financial problems. As a group, we want to help them solve these problems and we want to help local communities at the same time. My fourth speaker mentioned Rybnik and the new perspective, the new opportunities. We see great opportunities. We all know what Rybnik is. These are assets which require modernization. Within the framework of modernizing it so that Rybnik meets the EU requirements, we will also be going in the direction of heat generation. In the future, we will be preparing a whole program for Rybnik and the vicinity. It will be focusing on the development of district heating networks in the region. As you know, we are a co-owner of PGG. PGG also owns small district heating networks, which will require some concept about their functionality in the future. We will be aiming to achieve more synergies and to offer solutions also concerning the district heating networks which are currently owned by PGG Group. Last but not least, as I stated before, we create a value. Right now the puzzles are coming together. That's the future. Our future related to consolidation of EDF's asset. As I stated before, we see a huge potential to develop district heating systems in various locations. As was stated, maybe at the beginning of September we'll be able to give you some details about our cogeneration and heating systems strategy, the assets that are currently there after we have acquired EDF's asset, put us not only on the position of a leader in terms of electricity generation. We as a group are a leader in the heating sector. We will be trying to acquire assets in different regions. Our whole energy program and heating program will be presented to you at the beginning of September this year. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for the questions. That's the end of the conference. So, well, that's the part of the conference that's normally of greatest interest for the journalists. Please state your name.
Mam dwa pytania. Od kiedy wyniki EDF w Polsce będą...
When will EDF's results in Poland be consolidated with the results of PGE? Will that be consolidated for this year? And I'm sure that you have estimated the valuation of these assets in Gdynia, Gdańsk, Kraków, Wrocław, and the ability to make them in line with the BATs and the ED directive. Well, in terms of the first question, consolidation. Well, we will be able to consolidate EDF with PGE once all conditions precedent are met, and we are the owner of 100% of the EDF's assets, and it's irrevocable. We would like this to happen as quickly as possible. However, it's not up to us, actually. We have to get a green light from the French government, from the minister, and from the Office for Protection of Competition and Consumer, as well as the Agency for Agricultural Properties. In terms of your second question, we are estimating the investment needed for us to meet the BAT requirements. That would be several hundred million PLN. I cannot give you an exact figure right now. I could tell you that it's going to be 600, 700 million PLN. This would be the level that we would be expecting. However, these are good assets. Let me emphasize it from the beginning. These are not neglected assets, underinvested assets. However, due to the EU requirements, the modernization process must be carried out. This is the assumption today. However, this will be part of the whole integration process to specify the financial considerations needed that would allow us to use the acquired assets for many years to come. Polish Press Agency, you spoke of the need to invest and make financial outlays. The users of the services of the assets that you have acquired, can they expect any price increases or lowering of the prices? Well, we're not assuming that there might be any price raises. Let me say that this is a regulated price. It's based on the tariffs. Energy Regulatory Office has a lot to say in this respect. As of now, we are not assuming any price changes.
A jeszcze uzupełnię
To complement that, if I may,
innym stwierdzeniem. Otóż w Komisji Europejskiej sprawa VAT-ów została minimalnie przegrana, jak wiecie.
the notion of the topic of BATs was lost by a whisker on the level of the European Commission. However, these are huge financial outlays for many local authorities, and many local authorities will have problems to deal with that, namely to adapt their own assets to the requirements of the European Commission within the set deadline. I am assuming that there will be some ownership changes. Looking at the assets that have been acquired by PGE in many important locations, many local authorities do not want to own the heating assets. From the economic perspective, thus, this process will most likely continue. In many locations, local authorities acted on the assumption that there won't be any certain purchaser who wouldn't only focus on maximizing the profit, who would look at the heat as part of a full picture, decided to do what they did. If PGE is going in a direction of cogeneration, then definitely there's going to be a big challenge, a big market challenge.
Bardzo proszę teraz puls biznesu, Magda Graniczewska. Podnieś rączkę. Z tyłu, z tyłu.
Puls biznesu.
Mam pierwsze pytanie do pana ministra.
My first question goes to the minister. What about the expectations stated by both gentlemen from PGE related to the support for cogeneration? And my two other questions go to the presidents. Are you assuming to acquire a financial partner in the future? And what about Toruń? Have you already analyzed the development of this asset? And do you see any change to cooperate with Lux Veritatis Foundation? Well, for the first part, the support negotiated with the European Commission lasts until the end of 2018, and obviously heating plus electricity in particular and gas-based sectors will have problems to find themselves on the market in the new constellation. It's not only about Poland. I'm certain that solutions supporting or favoring cogeneration will be developed still in Poland. There are still many coal-fired heating plants switching to gas-fired CHPs. From the point of view of local emissions, will be very important. Support for cogeneration, therefore, is necessary. In terms of Toruń, to start with your last question, Madam, let me remind you what the situation looks like today in Toruń in terms of EDF assets. We have started a new investment, gas-fired block, that is to substitute two coal-fired blocks which will be decommissioned. This is part of the evaluation. It's not that we purchased something that will be decommissioned soon. However, in terms of the relations on the Toruń market, let me refer back to the principles of the Code of Ethics of PGE. The supreme principle is to follow fair competition. So fair competition or fair cooperation, because that's the second most important principle of our Code of Ethics, well understood business cooperation or partnership. These are the principles that we are going to follow. However, in terms of the business partner or the financing partner for the cogeneration assets, well, in business, the story is that the situation today may change tomorrow. However, this will depend on what the parties' will is, whether they want to cooperate or not, whether there are right conditions for the cooperation and whether there are common targets and common goals that can be reached. As I said in Krynica, when announcing our strategy, we are not excluding anyone from potential cooperation. However, this cooperation must be on good terms, which will allow us to implement the strategy of the group and increase the shareholder value. Aneta Wieczerzak, Rzeczpospolita Parkiet Daily. Two questions to the board of PGE Group. One relates to the stock exchange. We are talking about a subscription tender for Cogeneracja, the company. When could that happen, or will it be only up to 66% or for 100%? And my second question applies to Rybnik, not the current existing assets, but the new project, the coal-fired unit. When could you be taking this investment decision? And when potentially could we hear of the first expenses related to that project? In terms of Cogeneracja, we are not planning to pull Cogeneracja away from the stock exchange. The subscription tender for 66%, that's something that we are obliged to do, and this will follow the provisions of law. In terms of the new cogeneration block, well, this slip of tongue already broke the secret. Well, let me rephrase that. Yes, well, what I said before could be interpreted in only one way. Frankly speaking, we know about the plans related to Rybnik. We know that the investment process was well advanced. However, once we read the documents, we will be able to connect the dots and put it in a larger perspective of the whole town of Rybnik, and then we will take the right decision. Let us not forget, however, that Rybnik is not only the new investment. Rybnik are the current current blocks that need to be adapted, and that's going to be a challenge for us as well. We cannot forget that we want to keep Rybnik, and we want to keep it as an active asset. Bloomberg.
Nie, tam dalej. Jeszcze za chwilę wrócimy tutaj.
Dzień dobry, Maciej Matwej, Bloomberg. Ja chciałem właśnie podpytać jeszcze o ten Rybnik.
Well, let me ask for more details about Rybnik. You were talking about 560 megawatts of heat. That's the demand, the possible total demand for heat in Rybnik, correct? Yes. In other words, you would be the sole source of heat there. So that's the potential that you would be reaching from this power plant. Yes, that's our initial estimate, without going into much detail. As I said, in the future, soon we will have a detailed analysis about Rybnik and the location. 560 is a rough estimate. However, it shows the direction we want to go in when it comes to Rybnik, the power plant, and the heat demand there, because bear in mind, this is the heat demand from cogeneration. So to complement, we are analyzing the heat market in the vicinity of Rybnik, broadly understood. We want to see whether the existing installations will be able to survive the entry into force of EU regulations. This is the potential that we see and that we are trying to tap. If because of the entry into force of the ED directive and BATs, these masses will not survive, then we'll have to change our strategy. My second question is, what about the potential in smaller towns? You said that you have identified some potential for cooperation. The minister was mentioning that local authorities will most likely be selling their assets because they cannot afford the investments. So what you are planning are investments? Is that correct? And my general question, how much are you going to spend for such a small generation unit and heating networks in the years to come? Well, to give you an exact answer, we would have to wait until September. Then we will be talking about our cogeneration strategy. We don't want to determine whether there's going to be any purchase or acquisition or a PPP. Each form, as of now, is possible, is acceptable. We will try to address this question about the business models that seems to be the most favorable for us. However, let's not talk about the strategy right now, because the strategy will be released only in September. We want to have some time in the media. Then Tok FM radio. When the norms of quality of solid fuels, when will they enter into force? That's a question to the minister. And how will that impact PGE's results? PGE's results are not dependent on the said norms. In my view, I wouldn't expect any significant impact. In terms of the interministerial negotiations, we are going in the right direction. The question was asked without the microphone, it was inaudible. RMF, again, question to the President. We heard a lot about the benefits for investors in your presentation. What about the customers? The individual off-takers, and what do you expect from the Office for Protection of Competition and Consumers? Do you expect that the office will set some conditions for you, or will require you to modify your presentation, for instance? In terms of our current customer base or future customer base, I think that PGE gives you the sense of stability of functioning, predictability of decisions that it will be taking. As regards our customers, the customer is our key value, thus we try to protect them. However, we want to have as many customers as possible, and we want them to consume as much heat and electricity as possible. That's our wish to all of our customer base. However, again, referring back to your question about the Office for Protection of Competition and Consumers, we heard today from the previous president of the office. I think it really exhausts the topic. I wouldn't expect, though it's hard to give you any certain statement on behalf of the president of the said office, I wouldn't expect, however, any difficult negotiations or hard nuts to crack. But life is life. It's only my assumption. In terms of market concentration, there are markets which are much more concentrated in Europe. Let us look at the Czech Republic. 70% of the electricity sold to the customers is centralized there, so we are still a long way from there. Business Alert PL. Slightly off topic, we have the Minister for Energy here and the President of PGE. Let me ask the following question. When can we expect the financing of a project that relates to the nuclear energy? And the question to the presidents of PGE, since EDF is pulling away, maybe they will be able to cooperate with us in terms of the nuclear power plant. Well, the decision to build a nuclear power plant in Poland will be taken earlier than in 2020. I do hope that this will occur before the end of this year, which is a result of the necessity to specify the energy mix as a result of the requirement of Poland adapting to the emission levels required by the EU. We have to decide about some things earlier than we planned. The decisions have not yet been taken. There are some differences of opinion in terms of the energy mix. Nevertheless, the decision must be taken earlier, since when taking investment decisions, the state treasury must bear in mind the fact that it owns the energy companies, so we cannot keep them uncertain, because it has a direct bearing on the expenses. I hope that this decision, in a nutshell, will be taken until the end of this year. Question is inaudible. Ask without the microphone. Hard to talk about a financing model if you haven't taken a decision about whether you're going to go in a certain direction or not. I don't see any need of pondering about it earlier than required. And to put you in a more relaxed mood, well, you know, business is about money, huge money, the responsibility for the money. Responsibility are about whether you're able to watch TV at night or during Christmas, because, you know, without electricity you won't go anywhere. There is some information circling around. Some of you are still trying to put speculations about my health, saying that I should quit, I should resign because of my age, because of my health condition. Let me say that I had some time off. I went on holiday. Some of my holiday time was devoted to taking my regular medical checks. I did have some health problems. Since 2009 to 2014, for 5 years, I was fighting a malignant cancer. When we look back, 2014, it's some time from now. Now I had my periodical medical check. The results are very good. My doctor said, and he's a 10-year my junior, he said it would be fascinated and exhilarated to have such medical results. That was a kick of energy for myself. So, for that very reason, I'm not going to resign. And now, seriously speaking, I do feel great in terms of my health. Inaudible question. Well, after what the minister said, What can I add? PGE is always great. Is always feeling great. Inaudible question again. After 2020, let me explain to you what Mr. Emil Wojtowicz said to you. He said that the decision about nuclear in PGE will be taken after 2020. That's the date that we assumed in our strategy. And until we don't change the strategy, we are not going to stop talking about nuclear. We want to be credible and responsible, and we want to be consistent in our words and our deeds. But that doesn't mean that we are limited in any way. If the circumstances are okay, we said that we will be taking some decisions if the environment allows us to do so. We are constantly analyzing the environment. We are trying to foresee what the future will bring. In my opinion, we have one of the best, if not the best, analytical team analyzing the market development. We are still trying to answer the question whether our perception of reality now and in a few years' time will be the same. That's the basis, and that's the determinant of our decisions. In the current environment, the company cannot take any other decision than that. What I said related to the necessity of economic or external character. I was referring to our cooperation with the European Commission. That's what it looks like. That's for this year. From today's perspective, the company cannot take any other decision. It's not that the nuclear program was put to a stop and nothing is happening. Everything that we have planned is being carried out. We are conducting different tests of an analysis of technologies of locations, so the work is on the way. However, there is no decision about pinpointing the location. That would require much broader scope of information. We are conducting preparatory works. Nothing was put to a halt. It's just pity that some years back the works were started. However, the fruit of it is rather invisible. Well, there is significant acceleration. I represent your partner, your shareholder. So there is some acceleration, I can tell you. In my opinion, what the company did in 2016 was actually higher than expected. You were able to catch up significantly. There is no backlog now. And if you bear in mind that the first 5 years of preparation of the nuclear energy program were very hard works. You had to cooperate with local communities, carry out a range of studies and acquire local decisions, which is time-consuming, but not cost-generating. If you look at these 5 years, we come to the conclusion that we are on the right way to cover this within a shorter period of time. We are acting as if the decision was already taken. This is a risk that the company decided to take, and I would like to thank you for that. In a way, this is a significant expense,
Jednak w jakimś zakresie będą
and definitely
elektrownie tak czy inaczej musimy
this will be used. We have to construct a power plant either way. So if you conduct all the studies for a nuclear power plant, that will put you on the right position to have any type of plant, but I hope that won't be the case.
Dzień dobry, Magda Stolarska, TVN 20.
TVN 24, two questions to the Minister.
Panie ministrze, czy zna pan sprawę wyboru pana Daniela Obajtka na
Do you know the story of Daniel Obajtka being elected to the board of one of energy companies? He is
regulamin mówi,
right now facing criminal charges,
że karne, jak
a
skarbowe, zarówno przygotowawcze, jak
penal proceeding is opened against him. Are you knowledgeable about it? This person is supposed to be a member of the supervisory board, whereas the regulations of the supervisory board clearly say that the person must not be the subject of any legal proceedings. Now let me move on to the president of the board of KGHM. Do you know that the driver of the limousine of the president is brother-in-law of the said person, and that he earns 20,000 PLN? Well, this question was not applicable to the topic of this conference. Well, I wouldn't like to take the microphone away from you. I wouldn't like to butt in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we meet here. I do feel to be the host of this meeting. We meet here to talk about what's vital for PGE in the context of acquisition of EDF's assets. So let's stick to the topic. Nevertheless, well, your question did spoil the atmosphere, the business atmosphere of this conference. First of all, the minister is not interested in who is the driver of any of the presidents. I was never interested in that. So that's going to be my answer from the point of view of legal provisions. If having a family member work for you violates any principles, then we will definitely investigate that. The president is always trying to choose their teams because, you know, they are people who are responsible for many things, and they have to be sure that their driver will take them everywhere on time, safely, in line with the provisions of the traffic law. So do forgive me, madam. I don't think that the minister should intervene on such a level. That would be laughable. In terms of second question that you asked, you know the answers, they are available online. I've already had 3 MPs questions about it. I obtained the information from the supervisory board that this was a lawful election, and that's it for me. I'm not analyzing these things in detail. I don't even plan to do so. If I have such questions, that's the only answer that I can give you. If we identified that a law was violated, then we will act accordingly. There are state services responsible for that. If law was broken by a corporate supervision body, and if I was to be interested in such matters, then strategic decisions would not be taken. If a question like that is asked, then I forward it to the people who are responsible for that. Because if the election of the president of the supervisory board were lawless, then we would be talking about a totally different sphere of law. Then it would be a violation of law, and therefore I'm leaving it to the people who are responsible for that. And you know, this is not the responsibility of the Ministry for Energy. In our company, we have a number of different penal proceedings. I'm not even going to give you a direct number. Some of them concern even the sums of tens of millions of PLN. And, you know, the bigger ones reach my ear. Once the information is credible, corporate bodies take the decision. These decisions have already been taken in our case. Let's come back to PGE business. Wysokie napięcie.pl. The question goes to the minister. The minister said that in the context of BATs, it's very important to switch to gas cogeneration. Are there any estimates or analysis related to how will that impact coal consumption? We heard that in 2030 we wish to produce exactly the same amount of coal like now. Some of that coal that we are using in CHPs and power plants is the coal that we source from Polish mines. And the question number 2 to the presidents: is Rybnik right now profitable? Is the cash flow positive there? And you meant retrofitting in Rybnik. How many of the blocks there are ready for retrofit? I remember the amount of money that you gave us, 500, 600 million. Is that all? Will you be waiting for the support system to modernize the blocks so that they meet the BAT standards? Or are you going to give it a green light and take the risk that there won't be any support system available and that there won't be any payback on this investment? That's it. Well, the simplest answer is an answer that I can offer to your second question. This is a topic of works. We have the integration team working on that. They will also specify the plans and levels of investment for retrofits in individual installations. As regards Rybnik only, right now, allow me to skip this answer. However, we can say that the impact of Rybnik on the price of the assets was not significant. And retrofit of Rybnik? Well, that's connected with what I mentioned before, namely upgrading 1 or 2 blocks to heat generation. I don't remember which of them can be retrofitted, which not. From what I remember, 4 for certain. 4 200s. I don't remember the numbers nor the scale of predicted outlays as of now. If I am to say what will happen in the sphere of the decisions of local authorities, I can only base my answer on observation of what's happening there, where we are trying to be in the loop. There are some places which think about coal-fired CHPs. They are simply cheaper. Nevertheless, it's hard to say what will happen with that and how will the local authorities deal that matter. Now, however, in terms of restructuring the hard coal mining sector with the current production levels, we can say that we hope that it won't change and that the coal companies will handle that. We know that some mines have a much shorter life cycle and then we'll have to be opening new ones. However, until 2030, there won't be any drop in the demand for coal in Poland if we are to cover the increased demand for electricity in our country. So let's hope that we only are able to build so many new plants and modernize the old ones that we are able to cover that peak in demand. Unfortunately, we are in a situation which is harder than the situation of the old member states. Mr. Šefčovič was recently kind enough to state that in the old 15 member states the demand will drop by around 8%, and from what we see in Poland it will grow by over 25%. And is there a green light from the owner that PGE develops gas-fired cogeneration there? Well, PGE has not asked for any green light, for any approval, so it's hard to answer your question. It will definitely be an optimum decision. Frankly speaking, from the regulatory perspective, gas-fired energy sector is the easiest to regulate. All the peaks in demand resulting from our climate and the mood of the society require us to develop gas energy. No one is saying that we will be going away from gas. We only stated that we want to keep the coal-fired energy level, because Poland is not able to finance the burden of a quick switch to gas. As I said recently in Katowice, we are able to decrease the share of coal in energy mix down to 50% between 2040 and 2050. That's more or less the timeline, which may be abstract from the current position. However, there would be a huge financial outlay. And that's what we are stating when we talk to the European Commission. Well, we are part of the EU and we have to think realistically about what we can do. If I may add, we will be analyzing each project in terms of its economic efficiency. That's the basic principle in law. There's a basic principle in our company, I'm sorry, because there has to be a payoff. On the other hand, if we wish to modernize the heating plants or the CHPs, will there be gas? So the availability of gas is key here. We have to adapt our investment plans to the availability of fuel in individual locations. What's more, we are trying to analyze the situation after 2021, when the Baltic pipeline will be commissioned. So we are trying to see what will be available, whether that will be coal or biomass or gas, and how will that impact the final price for the end user. The customer matters the most for us. That's why we want to make sure that they are comfy, warm, and enjoy light in their room. Whenever a question is asked about gas, We normally think about imported gas. Let us not forget that we also produce gas in Poland. PGE has some good experience in this respect. Gorzów, for instance, is gas-based. It's locally sourced gas, and it's much cheaper, not only for the people in Gorzów, but also in the vicinity. Well, let me remind you that in Gorzów we not only have district heating, but we also have CHP. It's also in Rzeszów that we are using our natural gas. It's cleaner, better, feeding directly to the network, to the grid. It's Polish gas. Well, the same is the situation in Zielona Góra. We'll also be using our local natural gas. If I may compliment it, I often hear that I'm a minister that tries to manage companies manually. By saying companies, I mean companies that we control as the state treasury. Well, I'm much less intervening into the businesses of our companies than my predecessors. The boards often use my knowledge and my experience, and I sometimes to talk to them. Secondly, I am trying to be a thorough an owner as the ministry. I'm trying to have information straight from the source, and I think that from time to time, there are some time considerations. However, from time to time, I'm trying to meet the presidents of and the boards of the companies. Yet, if you asked the gentleman sitting next to me about how many times they spoke to me since I took the office, well, there wouldn't be any surprises. That's not very frequent. However, I want to know which is the direction that the company is pursuing. We want to know what's the organizational situation. That's the corporate activity. If you take an analytical view at it, you will realize that it's not possible to hand manage it. You have to trust the people.
Trochę mają czasami więcej pracy niż kiedyś, ale też nie utrudniają pracy, wiadomo. Więc praca idzie dobrze, efekty są.
The work is underway.
Możemy spokojniej spać. Ciepło, robi się coraz cieplej. Blackoutu bardzo się nie boimy.
We're not afraid of any blackout. It's getting warmer and warmer. What can I add?
Dokonali takiego zakupu.
You purchased what you did, you have cash. And on the other hand, if there are some investment needs, we try to talk about them, and then we are trying to be realistic in terms of the earnings and dividend. I had the pleasure of talking to some shareholders, and we were talking about significant share in many companies. However, I heard that there are no complaints about the reinvestment undertaken by our companies. Some formula of short-term investments ends on the record date and the dividend payment day. But, that's that's obvious. This is the end of the conference. Thank you very much for coming. We can continue our discussions in the informal part of today's meeting.